And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast, specifically tonight covering the Rowdies, as I usually do. I do not have my usual co-host, Carlos. He is dealing with some finals this week in college, so instead we are turning to the ever-reliable, ever-present producer of RBLR Sports, and that is Eureka. How are you doing tonight, Eureka?
Getting off a plane this morning, I felt like it might have been my final days, but it's so if I sound a little worse for the wear, I do apologize. But we're here, we're kicking, and a little shock to the system with the news today. I'm sure we'll get into that, and it'd be nice to kind of put a bow on these expectation versus reality grades that we've been handing out so far.
Yep. Unfortunately, we do have some news that I think will possibly divide fans as to how good or bad it is. But we do need to finish up with our player grades. So
that's true.
I don't know exactly how to keep going from here. Let's do our finish our intro bit here, Eureka, and then we'll keep going. So obviously the World Cup carries on. As we stand today recording, Argentina has just won their way into the final. So congratulations to Lionel Messi on continuing to be the best player that ever was and ever will be. After that, we will see how France and Morocco do to see who plays them. Now, moving forward, we do want to continue with our individual player grades. It's going to be like last year and the last couple episodes where we do our expectations versus reality, and this will be for the forwards. So everybody, that is going to be our show. But we do need to stick around for some news because there is a lot of Rowdies news actually going on, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on, which person you're talking about, I guess. But I think that I feel like I know where most Rowdies fans are going to fall. Follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. Of course, we ask you to do that and like and subscribe to our podcast. Now, with that out of the way, Eureka, I think that we haven't danced around the bush too much, but beaten around the bush either. But can you just, for our listeners, give us the headline news, and we're gonna have to jump into it. I don't want to, but we gotta do it sometime, right?
Yeah, I guess chronologically, the Rowdies today, as of us recording this on a Tuesday, the Rowdies put out a little statement saying that they were mutually parting ways with Rowdies legend, all-time franchise leading scorer, Sebastian Guenzatti. And it was not too long after that the Indy 11 posted a kind of cryptic little teaser that they were going to do some signings. And it was, pretty apparent what they were, that these were both related. And it was confirmed a little bit later on that, yes, Sebastian Guenzatti will no longer be wearing the green and gold, which is shocking to say, but he is former Rowdy Sebastian Guenzatti making his way to Indianapolis. So, all of the feelings, James, all of the feelings. Immediately, it's shocking. Immediately, it is not the news I wanted on a Tuesday, but what do you want to? What was your first thoughts when you saw? I mean, I know I sent it in the group chat. Hey, we should be paying attention to this. This just happened. What were your feelings right off the bat?
I wanna say, obviously, there's nothing that is going to. There's nobody that's going to replace Sebastian Guenzatti within the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Obviously, there's somebody who's literally going to replace him on the team, replace his role. I don't want to say that, but the stature of person that Sebastian Guenzatti is at this club, the legend that he has built in Tampa Bay, I don't think that is something that will ever be replaced. And, we can try to fill his position. Obviously, Neil Collins is going to be trying to fill his position. That's his goal as the coach. That's his goal, to try and make a team work so that we can win things. And I guess that possibly he thought Sebastian Guenzatti was not going to be the person to help do that. But it's devastating in a personal term, but if you look at the business aspect of what is a soccer team there to do, a soccer team is there to win. A soccer team is there to draw in fans. How do fans, why do fans want to show up? They want to show up for a team that wins. Unfortunately, I think that came into play here. And I guess, obviously based on how it went, things turned out that's where Neil Collins thought our best chance was. And I think that it's kind of obvious considering a lot of parallels with the team that he ultimately went to and a move that was made by the Rowdies earlier this season. So I want to get into that. But is there anything more you want to expand on before we get into the nitty gritty of it? And are there any first takeaways before we try and actually suss this out and see where things are, see what we could do in terms of our roster and team building, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I had made a little offhanded comment about, this, when the initial, it literally was called Rowdies Make Initial Roster Decisions for 2023. That press release now famously has 2 players that were said to be under contract.
Yep.
That we get shocking news that they will not be, they'll be under contract, but not for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, right? So it's, I'm hoping that doesn't turn into even more people, but now we've seen 2 players, which we'll get into that news a little later on too. But so that's the shocking part of it is, well, wait, is there more to this story that who knows if anyone will ever give us those details? But were they really under contract? Was there, some sort of because it wasn't about player options. He was under contract according to this statement. There was nothing to believe otherwise. But now he's not a Rowdy, and there's no bigger name for this current era than Sebastian Guenzatti. He is the captain. He's been the captain for all these Eastern Conference Finals teams. He's been the leading scorer a couple years ago in his amazing run. We'll get into sort of the expectations we had this year for him and moving what we thought moving forward would happen. But now to think that future isn't going to be at Owl Lang, we're not going to see Sebastian Guenzatti unless I'd have to look at the schedule about when Indy 11, if they're coming here this year, right? Or when they're coming here, right? So it's really tough because he's been the model of what a professional should be at for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. He was, personally, he was always just an amazing player to deal with, amazing person on and off the pitch for all accounts, and a member of our community. Many of the Rowdies faithful have interacted with him and his family throughout the years that he's been here. So it's I kind of feel like we're uprooting a tree that has deep roots, and that's why I think it's so emotionally shocking to begin with to think that we will no longer have Sebastian Guenzatti on the roster. So. But I think I'll leave some of the opinions on his playing until we get to that part later on. But that's the biggest thing is that it is a whole new era. If it wasn't apparent now or before, losing the loanees that we loved, losing some of the names that we've always been able to slot into that 11. Well, Sebastian Guenzatti is no longer here, so he will. That captain ban is going probably to Aaron Guillen, and that's the biggest thing. Is it wasn't just a Band-Aid getting ripped off. This was like limb surgery. We will have a completely different leg on our collective body. I think that's the biggest takeaway initially.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was the first analogy that came to mind, but I think that it's actually pretty good. Eureka, yeah. you are onto something with that because he has been an establishment at this club. So let's try to. I want to get back to the emotional aspect of it, but we can't do emotions on this entirely, because this requires more than that, which is maybe unfortunate also, because, we're fans and we're not players or coaches or anything like that. So let's look at it a little, just a little bit more than, I'm sad to see him go, which it should be noted, we both are. we definitely are. But
truly, yes.
Obviously a day is going to come when every single player who ever plays for the Rowdies will leave the team. That could be, let's just say, Tate Johnson signs for the Rowdies next year as a homegrown player like they have in MLS. He plays a 20-year career for the Rowdies. Whether that includes any future promotion or relegation or not, who could say? But let's just say that all of that happens. There will come a day when Tate Johnson eventually does retire. So every single player that shows up for the Rowdies in one game or another, be it a friendly, a trial, the Open Cup this season, a championship game, all of those will leave us, unfortunately. So we need to keep that in mind. The way that I'm looking at this is I want to compare this to a player, and I think I did this in a previous podcast. So if anybody is hearing this again, apologies for the redundancy here, but I think that it is important to look at it this way, because it is actually, like the other case is even more astounding. And I think that it helps illustrate what's going on here. So to go to that example, Bayern Munich. I know the Tampa Bay Rowdies versus Bayern Munich. Again, there's a level difference here, but let's keep with it. Bayern Munich are champions of the European UEFA League, the Champions League champions. They are obviously the German champions. I believe that they won the FIFA Club World Cup along this stretch. They have been, an extremely good team between 2010 and now, and probably will still be into the future. So one of the huge players along that period was Robert Lewandowski. Now, Robert Lewandowski is a legend for Bayern Munich. He's also a legend for Borussia Dortmund, but that is a separate case here. He is ultimately getting older, just like any player obviously does, because that is the time, the temporal space that we all live within. But he was let go before his contract expired, actually, let alone, the case with the Rowdies here. He was let go by Bayern Munich before his contract expired because they were going to get 40 million euros from FC Barcelona to sign him, and they let him off their books. So obviously Robert Lewandowski has a huge contract because he's one of the best players that they have and have had. For him, they get this transfer fee, and the way that it was explained at the time, for a lot of fans who were upset that a living legend was leaving the club, that someone who could contribute the next year was leaving the club. He has moved on to Barcelona, and in his first year, I believe he scored as many goals as he has played games. So obviously we know that he can do it still. But the point is that when you are a club in a high level of soccer, when it comes to the striker in particular, this is a very difficult position to fill, especially in terms of consistency. You only get Robert Lewandowski's, you only get Sebastian Guenzatti's, for our case, every once in a while, someone who can play for 7 or 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 years and score a ton of goals every single one of those years. You only get one of those every once in a while. Mostly you don't, and mostly you have to filter through people. But if you do have that player, what you want to do in that case, you want to give him up a year before he turns out to be a bad investment, so to speak, in terms of the money that you're putting out with salary, as opposed to keeping him a year longer. Then you want to have him as a high salary player that's not scoring a lot of goals. So even if you're going to lose out on a season where he scores a lot of goals, you would prefer to do that as a club than keep him a year longer than he will be there to score a lot of goals. That is generally how it's been portrayed from the upper echelons, the management of different soccer clubs. And I believe that that's the case for Bayern Munich getting rid of Robert Lewandowski. And actually, I think maybe even a year late, which no one could have predicted, no one should have predicted. But I believe that is what the Tampa Bay Rowdies are thinking when it comes to Sebastian Guenzatti. Now, that was a very long way of getting through all of that example. Yeah. But Eureka, do you think I'm possibly off base, or do you think I'm reaching with that one? Maybe I'm kind of like grasping at straws here, because I obviously I'm with everyone else that seeing him go is shocking. And when I went onto Twitter, which was after the Argentina game, I was looking for a bunch of good Argentina news, but instead this is all that I saw on my I don't know if it's a Twitter feed, but my timeline, my feed, everything that I saw there was people losing their minds that Sebastian Guenzatti was going. And I thought it, like the first couple tweets, I thought like, this isn't real. And then obviously it turned out to be. So maybe I'm just in an emotional state right now and I'm grasping at straws. Maybe I am onto something. What do you think? Does that sound right to you?
So I think that is the dividing line, is if the opinion is that Sebastian Guenzatti, if you are giving him up early, right, that we still don't have the other shoe, we don't have the replacement, we don't have the immediate answer of like, what are they doing, why are they doing this, what is the upgrade supposedly that we are making above this legend that we have at the club. So but you're on the right track where you'd rather be a day early than sitting there holding the bill, right? So I completely understand what you're saying in terms of that. It's just they've obviously made that opinion for themselves internally that they do want to move on from Sebastian Guenzatti. As far as we know, I mean, we don't know if there's any other side of why they're mutually agreeing to part ways. We would hope. I mean, until I knew the Indy 11 news, I was hoping that there was maybe some international team or something, some kind of bigger, better.
I was honestly thinking that maybe he was off to Uruguay or something like that.
I was on completely. I was on the same because of the rumors that we had over the past year or two about when especially the year he was on the scoring tear. There was legitimate chatter that there was interest because he was the number one scoring Uruguayan national in the world that year. So there was always this kind of maybe back in the mind, maybe there's a bigger, better. And this is second division American soccer. So there are other avenues that players can go pursue and have pursued. And to be honest with you, I want them to, if they're available to do bigger and better things around the world, who's going to fault him for doing that, right? So at the beginning, that's kind of what I was thinking is like, yeah, okay, they've come to the decision that they don't want him on the Rowdies, or that maybe Sebastian thinks that he can go do something elsewhere. But then with the immediate news that it's Indianapolis, he's going to Indy 11, it's like, to me, that doesn't seem like a 1-for-1, trade in terms of club level. We'll see what Indy builds this year, but it does seem like he's kind of starting from scratch. And from that, maybe the inference is that he wasn't in the plans, maybe that's why they parted ways, is that maybe he had those same questions about like, where do I fit in this attack? Where do I fit in? And if the answers weren't what he wanted to hear, if he was about maybe minutes getting diminished, or we're bringing in other strikers that we haven't yet heard publicly. Again, this is all conjecture. I mean, I'm all I'm putting theoreticals out there, but those are the kind of things that would make this make more sense. That if tactically Sebastian Guenzatti was not going to be in a role that he believes he should be at this level of his career, then I could see why they would quote mutually, agree to part ways. So, but then again, like, everyone's mileage is going to vary in terms of what they believe Sebastian Guenzatti still had in the tank for the Rowdies and what he could have brought to us. And I think that's where the dividing line is that people that were like, no, he's our captain, he's our striker, like we want him to be here, and he's not exactly, that old. He's not exactly that he
No,
has
no.
gas left in the tank. And so uh, I've kind of seen that as the gamut of emotional responses, as some people are saying, kind of trust Neil Collins, trust the fact that what they're doing is worked so far. And but also some people mad that, like, there is no as of right now, there is no direction that we can tangibly look at right now. And so we'll have to revisit how we feel about the changes that are made, because we were talking before the show that there's quite a lot of, this is not your the same Rowdies that they were, even 12 months ago when we were doing the off season last year. So I'm trying to say, is there anything we want to wrap up before we get into our opinions and our tactical analysis of what we thought about Sebastian Guenzatti's 2022, and what we thought we were going to talk about his future with the Rowdies in 2023?
Yeah, before we get to 2022, because that is where you and I originally planned to take this episode, obviously. We needed to fill out the rest of the roster that we were doing and do the forwards and attackers here and talk about what happened with their 2022. But instead we got this bombshell dropped on us, so we got to deal with that. The way that I want to leave it is I did the best that I could to look at this from a Rowdies soccer business point of view. Let's leave it there, because I don't know, how much, as you said, we're going to learn about what the actual, what the actual decision-making process was or anything like that. We're probably not going to get a ton of information.
No.
At least until, let's say 5 years down the line, when Neil Collins or Sebastian Guenzatti has a book release or something like that. Who knows? Yeah. That's often how this stuff goes. But for the time being, we won't have that. I want to take it back to the emotional aspect now and say that, losing Sebastian Guenzatti is obviously very difficult. I think that more than just 100+ appearances. I don't actually know how many appearances it is now that he leaves with, but we know that he does leave with the all-time goal scoring record, which he took off of Yuri Kristov. And he did that in a season where he actually had a down season, but he had to come back and turn things around for himself, and he did. And, that's obviously incredible to see. It's really unfortunate. You can tell that the Rowdies' point of view was, he can't really do what we're asking him to do at the level that we're asking him to do it anymore, because he kind of went the same way as Juan Tejada, who was another favorite, obviously. So I think that there are parallels there. But for the emotional aspect of it, what I really kind of dislike about this is he was under contract for the 2023 season, as per the prior reports from the Rowdies specifically. They put that out on Twitter, and they put that out in their press release over who was going to be back the next season. You and I discussed that last week, and we were pretty happy to see that he was among those that were coming back. And what we don't get now is the chance to know ahead of time when Sebastian Guenzatti is leaving. So I think it's important for players who reach a certain stature to get their send-off game. And, maybe the Rowdies will have a friendly down the line. Maybe they'll have, I think in England, they call it a testimonial, where all the old legends show up for the guy's last game, and they're going to have a send-off, and they, sell special tickets and whatever. And, Wayne Rooney's last game for Man United wasn't necessarily just in the league, but they had a testimonial for him, that kind of thing. But we don't get that at this level of soccer. And now we're not going to get that kind of at all. It would be one thing even if American soccer were on the same schedule and, they could say, listen, this summer, it's unfortunate, but we're letting Sebastian Guenzatti go. And everybody knows, okay, come the end of May, that's the last that we're going to see of him. Everybody better get out there and support and thank Sebastian Guenzatti. Now, the thank you that we gave to Sebastian Guenzatti was, what was the last, home game? It was the playoff. It was the playoff against the Miami, and then we went away in the playoffs to Memphis, and then we went away in the playoffs to Louisville City. So I suppose anybody who got to go to Memphis or Louisville City, they got that much more of the goodbye, but none of us expected this. None of us knew that this was coming. So a player who currently owns some of the most appearances for this club ever and the goal scoring record for both the modern and the prior era, we don't get to, have the send-off game. And that's kind of where I am most emotional about this, because as I said prior, every player is going to end up leaving this club one way or another. And that's, sad in the way that all things affected by time are sad. But you maybe could do it better than this. When you announce that he's going to be back one week and then the next week you hear that he's gone, that is going to hit a lot of fans, I think, in the way that it's hitting us right now, Eureka. And I understand why the Rowdies are doing this, like I've said, but it's you can understand it all you want. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Well, look, I think we are holding a lot of water for the Rowdies by assuming that that they came to this decision and then wanted to make a good mutual decision and decided, hey, if you're not going to play as much as you would like to play, or if there's a disconnect on a tactical side and then on a business side, like you brought up, maybe we don't want I'm assuming one of our higher paid players sitting on the bench to come in as a super sub or something. Like all those things. Again, I think we're trying to come to grips like, oh, okay, this is a good situation for everyone involved, because we have good feelings for everyone involved. We don't want to believe that there's like a fracture in the relationship, and that that there was a something changed between a couple weeks ago when that press release was put out and now. Like I want to think that this is all win-win situation for everyone, and we'll look back on that. But yeah, the abruptness of it, we had it because we're keeping track on our little thing here off the side as we get ready for our 2023 preview and all this stuff, and we had him penciled in because they told us he was penciled in. But now we got to go back and erase that, and now it's like, we'll wait. And that brings up more uncertainty. It brings up even more, considering all the players we're going to talk about today. Most of them are not here, or the majority of them that we'll talk about today, they will not be here for 2023. So our expectations for a lot of these strikers are non-existent because they're elsewhere, right? So in a one swoop, in one tweet alert, we went from, our whole world kind of got upended. So again, you can't take the emotion out of it, but we're trying to come to some realization of why this would be good. But James, like you said, it doesn't change the fact that we kind of had something and then now we don't have it, and we don't know why exactly.
Nope. And right. It's going to take a lot more than just this podcast for you and me to kind of work through that. And I mean, it sounds like somebody died at this point, but
it does. No,
it's not.
It really does feel that
obviously
way.
Not. Yeah, it's not that level of emotional loss. But when you're a soccer club in the lower leagues in America, which is already kind of a soccer backwater, and if you look at the world of the sport, it does feel really heavy. And I know that there are going to be a lot of people. I think that there are probably going to be some people who are like legitimately mad at the coaching staff for this, like to the point that they don't believe in their decisions anymore. I don't think that I'm that. I don't know if you are, Eureka, but
No.
I think that it's still really heavy for a club that is. One of the things that soccer has going for it over almost every other sport in the world is heritage, so to speak. The World Cup started in 1930, and it started as an international sport on the big time in the Olympics in the 1920s. The first international game was in the 1880s. All of these clubs are that we talk about in Europe and South America are so old, and everyone that is trying to reach their level, whether that's in Asia or in Mexico or here in America, all of us are trying to reach that same level. And the thing that you do to get there is to build tradition, and tradition is built on, obviously something that happens over and over. And that's why, River Plate and Boca Juniors are very famous from Argentina, because they are the winners from Argentina. The Tampa Bay Rowdies are kind of famous within American soccer circles because they are actually one of the old teams that survived, so to speak. It wasn't continuous, of course, but it is now the same club. And building a tradition is important when you are trying to build a historical account of yourself and, give fans something to point to when they talk about what their club means to them. So Sebastian Guenzatti not being here next year, it doesn't put a dent in that, but it stops that progress. We were building something.
It's an end of a it's an end of a parenthetical, or it's like this is the era of Sebastian Guenzatti,
exactly,
which also coincides with the pinnacle that we've reached so far in this era of Rowdy soccer.
Yes.
We are in the golden age of the Rowdy soccer, of this second iteration of it, and now we have a firm stopping point to say, like, okay, like, we're in a whole new era. This is not the same era that we were in. He's been with us so many appearances, so many years, and left such an indelible mark that that's why it feels like it feels like we're moving on from something huge, because we are, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I like I said, I think that you and I will need to revisit this, and Carlos, when he returns from not just his travels but also his studies, he will have his own say on this, and I think that he might have even more than you and I have had to say so far. But that it's going to take a while, and I think that it's just unfortunate that this is the way that it went down. Personally, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to get past that, though, and move forward, because obviously that's just how the sport works too.
Yeah, and it's not fair. Speaking of moving on, right? It isn't fair, but it will happen. Is that there will be a striker up top. We don't know who, but a player is going to be at least compared to Sebastian Guenzatti as like an opportunity loss, right? Like an opportunity cost. I mean, like, so it's unfair to whoever this player will be. It's unfair to have to measure up to a legendary figure, but that's going to be part of it. So that's the other. We don't know what the other piece of this is. We don't have Seba, who will be there, and maybe the answer's on the roster. Probably going to be some sort of a signing that we haven't heard yet, and it's unfair to that player, but it's also that will be the final part. We'll still have all these feelings until the games are played and until we're satisfied with the result on the pitch with whatever the change is. So that's why this will linger. Unfortunately, I don't have any words that are going to make this immediately better or make you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's just we unfortunately have to wait and see. So that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So now, Eureka, I think that we should leave this first segment be, because this was not the segment that you and I had planned to start with, but let's leave that there, and we'll do a quick shout out for the RBLR shop here. So obviously, I want to say liking and subscribing is free, but if you do think that you possibly need some new clothes coming up, and hey, it is the Christmas season after all, why not think of them as a gift for other people as well as yourself? You can support our podcast just that little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we have going on there. There will be a link in the description, and you can use the promo code COYR for 10% off your order. So please do check it out and at least see what designs we've got, because I think that you will go on there and find something you like if you do that. Now, let's actually move into what we had planned, Eureka, because we did have some stuff to go over here. We have been going through our player grades during this offseason to go through our season review, and it's turned into a 4-parter. I originally thought it was going to be 2 or 3 parts, but here we are now that we're into it, and we need to do our forwards and attackers from this past season. We actually ended up doing Kyle Gregg last week, so we will go over him and count, just step over that part of this analysis, but regardless, he is not going to be with the Rowdies this upcoming season, so I suppose that makes it just a little bit easier for us anyway. And instead, we are going to start with number 19 on the roster, Jake LaCava. He is 21, soon to be 22 years old. This past season, he made 37 appearances with the Rowdies with 12 goals and 5 assists, a very good return, obviously. Between Carlos and myself, he won 5 Man of the Match awards from RBLR Sports, and it should be noted that his rights were traded to Inter Miami in MLS. He was obviously on loan from the New York Red Bulls, and that means that Inter Miami will choose to do with him whatever they want. More than likely, I think that he will, if he does go out on loan, it will not be to us. It will probably be to the Miami second team. That is their MLS Next Pro division team. So I don't think, unfortunately, that we will see much more of Jake LaCava, whether that is for or against us as Tampa Bay Rowdies fans. But we kind of knew that going in, just because he was on loan and he was a young kid who was doing well on loan from an MLS squad. Obviously, that is where he tried to get himself before he ended up with the Rowdies, and that's where he was trying to end up after his time with us. So, Eureka, let's do a quick segment on Jake LaCava and just try and fill in, not just I suppose, what were our expectations for him coming in and how it turned out for him, but also, if we could, let's do a little bit of, if we have any specific memories of him, because I think, unfortunately, this will be the last that Rowdies fans are able to appreciate that.
Yeah, on the whole, I think Jake LaCava is a guy that we all love the experience that we had. He came in hot and immediately set expectations that he was all of the dynamic striking that we were told he was going to be. We were told that, this is going to be the added dimension that we needed with Sebastian Guenzatti up top, right? We needed someone that could create for themselves, and we didn't know exactly what like Leo Fernandez was going to have in store. So this was someone we saw, or at least I believe that my expectation was he was going to be one of the attacking, scoring-minded options that we needed, kind of as a change in pace from the Dos Santos level of the target man and the crosses into the box kind of thing to a tall guy that can overpower. Here's a dude that can do a little bit of that, but also create at the top of the mixer and get in there and do some one-on-one penetration and put the ball in the back of the net. And he showed very early with it was like three matches or out of 4 of his first he scored in. So it's like, okay. Yep. And he very, very quickly established that, like, oh yeah, this is a different attack. This will be a different mentality. And then, so I mean, as far as that goes, I think he more than met expectations. And I think like, looking statistically, there is a kind of a lull in the middle of the season up until the very end where he just didn't really put a lot of numbers on the board. But I don't think I ever felt like he had lost a step or that he didn't have the ability to put one in. I think part of that is tactically you mark the most dangerous people on the thing and on the pitch. And so the thing is that you basically picked your poison between Leo Fernandez and Jake LaCava.
Yeah.
And it's like, if not that people didn't cover Leo Fernandez, but it's like you can't stop both of them. So you try to stop at least one, and the other one was able to feast on that. So maybe there's a timeline where Jake LaCava is the league MVP and Leo Fernandez is like a good but not amazing campaign. But at no time with Jake LaCava on the pitch do you feel like he's a liability. I wish that there were better numbers in the playoffs this year. I don't think he was like. Maybe you can correct me when I pass the mic back to you, but I don't really think there was more than a couple times this year that we were like, "Where is Jake LaCava? We haven't heard from Jake LaCava. Why isn't he getting opportunities?" Or that he's like a super liability on the pitch. Again, I do wish that Louisville City, which was a tight contest victory was going to be at the margins on that one, and it was unfortunately a game that he got subbed off or they brought him in at halftime, right? I'm trying to remember.
I think they took him off then, but yeah,
they took him off. They took him off in the 46th and brought in Dos Santos. So, I wish that was the storybook ending where it's LaCava putting one in the back of the net and sending us to the final. But again, on the whole, if I'm going back to the bigger picture, I think he had great expectations and because everyone was telling us he was this talented young player, and he definitely met or exceeded those expectations.
Yeah, I want to take it back actually to the last preseason episode we did, because I remember it was with Mike Watts, and he is, obviously very knowledgeable. You have to be a commentator, like for ESPN, right? You have to know what you're talking about. When he came on, we were talking about the roster as we knew it. I think at that point that roster might have included Forrest Lasso. I don't actually remember, but as we knew it at the time, Jake LaCava was the most exciting prospect at the time. And I jokingly said that, Jake LaCava wasn't going to live up to expectations only because his expectations coming in were so high. I was wrong. Even in that joke, I was wrong. Jake LaCava did what we wanted him to do, and probably more. The only issue that I had, unfortunately, something you already said, production kind of tailed off, especially in the time that we needed it, which was mostly towards the end of the season during the playoffs. But the other thing that you said when you mentioned that was just that, of course, we needed more than, just literal assists or goals production. You have to be the guy who, if you can't put it in the back of the net, you have to be at least the guy who can occupy the opposing team's defenders so that they do not focus all of their attention on somebody else who was, for the most part, Leo Fernandez or sometimes Sebastian Guenzatti. So, I still value Jake LaCava's input in, pretty much every game that he played this past season. I don't think there was one where he was totally anonymous and we were like, where the hell is Jake LaCava? He's barely done anything. There are no touches, whatever, that kind of stuff. That did not happen. So, I wish him all the best, of course, in terms of his career with Inter Miami. I think that it is, not necessarily a long shot. I don't expect him to start for Miami, certainly, but maybe down the road he can get a couple more appearances here and there, and he can turn some substitute appearances into, a super sub role. Maybe a super sub role becomes a starter role when he turns 24, 25, something like that. I think that would be great, and I think that he can certainly achieve it. So good luck to Jake LaCava down the road.
Oh, yeah.
And Eureka, I think that from there we can move on to the next guy in the list. And this is in order of appearances, everyone, so just keep that in mind. That is, for us, number 11 on the roster. You might know him as what was he? Eureka, if I'm reading this wrong, please let me know. I think that he is the 2022 USL Championship League MVP. Now is that correct? The Rowdies had the whole league MVP on their roster. It's somebody named Leo Fernandez.
Fernandez. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've seen this name before, but apparently this guy is 30 and he's turning 31. He made 35 appearances with us last year. And okay, Eureka, I must be reading this wrong at least. This says that he scored last year 20 goals and had 9 assists. I mean, I don't know about that. That sounds wild. It also says he's under contract for the season 2023. So,
for now,
Eureka, tell me what the hell you know about this Leo Ferdinandez.
Yes. Look, man, all jokes aside, Leo deserves all the accolades, all of the flowers, all of the things. Yeah, look, Leo Fernandez had himself a standout performance, to say the least.
Yes.
He is the league MVP, and it was a landslide. You know, when they even put out the finalists for the award, it was like, okay, this is not that close. Of course, we're homers. We definitely love everything that Leo did, but look, this is the story of the season, is that as many loanees that we brought in that were amazing for us, as much of, you know, we had some unheralded heroes have to rise to an occasion, and like Breno and things like that. Leo was a guy who changed positions, played multiple different tactical. He played on the wing. He played as a 10. He played as he could score dynamically with Guenzatti. He stepped up when Guenzatti was having a little bit of dip. We'll talk about that, but he ascended to the level that we needed to stay at the Eastern Conference Championship level that we've set. Without Leo's just absolute bonkers season, putting balls in the back of the net, we were on the brink. There was a little bit, you know, during the middle of the season where it was like, well, how far can we really go? And Leo is the guy that, in my mind, really, really kept the dream alive. And all he did was live up to and exceed expectations. I mean, no one could have expected league MVP. I mean, we love the guy, but no one should expect that of anybody. It's such a crapshoot. But without a doubt, stamped, notarized, crossed T's, dotted I's. This man did everything that he could. He left it all on the field. And that's not even to talk about like what he means to this club and what he will mean to this club going forward. But so many times he was the standout performer. He put a lot of balls in the net. He created a lot of offense, but even just being on the pitch, being a threat, opening those things up for Jake LaCava's and Steven Dos Santos's and Sebastian Guenzatti's, his presence was a net positive all of the time. He is a tenacious defender, and he was. We've been talking so much about his offensive, so it was all good. It was all of the good things about Leo Fernandez's 2022, and now that we're in this new era, he's the cornerstone now. So we'll see what 2023. It would be foolish to think he can replicate it, I think, being completely honest, because these are just so high highs. But I think we all knew we all thought or believed that he had this in him, and we got it. You know, like people that have been beating the Leo Fernandez drum, they got to eat their cake. They got to have their cake and eat it too with Leo. So good on him, and I couldn't be happier for the guy. And he's such a nice guy too, and a great kind of that. If he becomes the new model of what it means to be a Rowdy, I think the legacy is in good hands.
Yeah, that's that. There's not much of a better way to put that, actually. Yeah, when it comes to expectations, Leo Fernandez, of course, all joking aside, he was more than our expectations ever could have been. He was more than. I mean, at this point, the thing for me was if Leo Fernandez is not 30 and turning 31, let's say he's 29 and turning 30, I think that based on this season, he has a go in MLS. I mean, that's where I am based on the season that he gave us. Like, it wasn't just because we expected him to play the season at left wing back. He did not do that. He was too good for that. There was a time when I asked Neil Collins, I think it was due to injuries. Like, do you see Leo Fernandez stepping back there? And he said, we don't want to, just based on, I mean, it wasn't quite those words, but he said something to the effect of, we don't want to because he's been playing so well up in his more advanced role. And, who could argue with that, obviously? He totally deserved the season MVP, and the fact that he went from not a nondescript season, it was certainly a very good season, but he wasn't even on like the USL All League team or the All League 2 team, he wasn't on either of those, and there were a couple of Rowdies players on them, but he went from not on them to the league MVP. So there's nothing more that you could ask of a player. Literally, there is nothing more that you can ask of a player. He did everything that was in his power to take this team and carry it to new levels. He is the reason that we went into the playoffs as far as we did, because I don't think that the team was quite competing at the same level as it was in 2021 overall. Right. So Leo Fernandez, I hope that he stays until he retires. Based on this, we don't know if that's going to happen or not, of course, but we should at least have him for 2023. And I'm grateful for that, because I think that if he can do half of what he did in 2022, then that will be 10 goals and let's say 4.5 assists. So that would still be a hell of a good season, no matter who you are. And I think that it's pretty good to leave it there. Eureka, you got anything else?
Well said. I mean, thank you, Leo, for an amazing year. Yeah. And we have very high expectations just because you've set such a great precedent. So there you go.
Yep, exactly. So the next player on our list, and this is going to be where we get back into it, unfortunately for us both and all the listeners, number 13 on the roster, Sebastian Guenzatti. He is 31 years old, made 33 appearances, and scored 7 goals with 3 assists. In that time, he won 4 Man of the Match awards from RBLR Sports, and he broke the all-time scoring record for the Rowdies. Our note here, Eureka, says he was under contract for the 2023 season, but as we've already talked about so far this episode, there was a press release today that changed that. So he is off to Indy 11. We've talked about what that means, and I think that right now, because of where we are, like you and me, and what we're doing, let's focus on the 2022 season. And I just want to say Sebastian Guenzatti did not live up to expectations. Yep. And we'll get that out of the way early, because the expectations from Sebastian Guenzatti were based on his season where he should have won the USL Championship League MVP. He didn't because Haji Berry, scored more goals than him, and that's fair and good. But in the 2021 season, Sebastian Guenzatti scored not as many goals as Haji Berry, the second most goals in the league, but Colorado Springs was a nothing team. They didn't get far in the playoffs, if they even made it. I honestly don't remember, but we made it all the way to the final. It's unfortunate that we didn't win, of course, but that's where we made it. And so, in my opinion, I felt that Sebastian Guenzatti deserved it more because we were the better team, literally, and our team was doing better based on him. So that was the season that, informed our expectations coming into 2022. So when you look at that and then, you see 7 goals and 3 assists, that is underperforming. But I do want to say that 7 goals and 3 assists, already is a very good return. That's just like factually true. And B, he did win us, some very important points that we needed. And on top of all of that, of course, some of those goals led to him winning the all-time record for goals scored for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And that is what informs the 2022 season for me a lot more than, his expectations versus reality for Sebastian Guenzatti is just the exclamation point that he put on his career with this club, which unfortunately now we know was actually the end of the book.
Yeah. I'm happy that he had the ending of the season that he had, because look, I think it was, again, like I said about Leo, is going forward, it would I think have been foolish to expect a repeat of 2021, because that was a little out of character. The scoring, everything was so much more than he had done in so long. Being kind of, being in your late 20s, early 30s. But that resurgence kind of said, well, wow, he's going to be at least a dangerous attacker. And we didn't see that. We didn't see that. I mean, he scored his first goal 2 months at the end of April. We're talking 2 months into the season where he's playing as the lead striker. LaCava's doing most of the heavy lifting early on. And once he scored that one, it was a long, 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 long stretch until September where he scored another goal because, we were sitting on the graphic of him breaking the record, right? or at least tying the record. Like, when are we going to be able to put this out there? And during that stretch, he was demoted. And at first it was like shocking. But we were asking a lot of questions. We were trying to get to the bottom of like what's going on. Is this an internal thing? Is this is it just tactically? What is the problem? Because we have Sebastian Guenzatti coming in for 7-minute, 14-minute, 12-minute appearances, and it's like that is not what we expected out of our the rightful 2021 MVP, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, it was a slog, and it was a stretch, and it was something where I go, is this repairable? And internally, just in my own mind, was have we seen the finale of Sebastian Guenzatti? Will he just get stuck where he is, and then he just goes on an absolute tear? He finishes the season. The whole team is looking in the right direction, heading into the playoffs, and it was very, very. I'm so happy that we at least got to that, because when it mattered the most, he turned it on to get the final seeding that we wanted, and he was not just along for the ride. He was driving the ship, and he was contributing the way that we had expected, or even probably exceeded the expectations at the end of the year that he had set up through that kind of highs and lows, the roller coaster that we rode with Seba this year. So, I was prepared to say that, going forward, what would we have expected from him in next season? And I think it was going to be a diminished role. I kind of think that we had seen the heights that we were going to get out of Sebastian Guenzatti, and we were going to change tactically anyway. We've been kind of hinting at that with our midfielders and defenders, and there's a lot of turnover on this roster. There was already going to be a lot of change. Who knows in philosophy what that would have ended up with Seba on the pitch in this year, but all the signs were pointing to that he was probably going to have a diminished role, and they were going to bring in some different players. And now we know that absolutely will be true. Because he's not here anymore. But so I think you hit the nail on the head. We probably shouldn't have expected a repeat of 2021, but he definitely did not live up to even tempered expectations up until the very end of the year. And so it was a wonderful ride at the end. It was good to be in the post game pressers when he finally got over the hump, and he was and to see all the other players on this team that were happy for his resurgence.
They were so emotional for that. Everybody was.
You could tell that they believed in him even when he wasn't putting things together. So I'm glad that it ended the way it did. That it was all mostly happiness up until the gut-wrenching loss again in the Eastern Conference Final. But you cannot take Sebastian Guenzatti away from the success that the Rowdies had this year. He was a huge reason why we got to where we were, even if the middle of the season was not what anyone wanted.
Exactly. So, yep, I tend to agree with all of that as well. But yeah. I think, unfortunately, with Sebastian Guenzatti right now, we don't have more to go on than that. So,
yeah,
unfortunately, let's close that chapter of this Rowdies team and also of this podcast episode, because I don't want to keep going because I feel like down that road there be tears. But
we're gonna open the wound up again when Carlos gets back.
Exactly,
on and we hear all his thoughts.
Yeah.
So just get ready. Yeah, that's gonna be, the emotions will still be there.
For sure. But for the time being, let's move on to the next player on our list. That's number 10 on the roster, Steven Dos Santos. He is 33 years old, made 24 appearances, and scored 7 goals himself. He earned 1 Man of the Match award from RBLR Sports and was allowed to leave during this offseason. I think from 2021 to 2022, expectations versus reality, as we have been doing. Unfortunately, I would probably say Steven Dos Santos is another player who did not quite live up to those. Now, it should be tempered by the fact that he is, aging more than the other players, because he is 33 years old as opposed to even 30 or, in his 20s. That does play a role the older you get, of course. And I think the only player who that might not affect at a level where it slows them down, or a level that it impacts their ability to score, I should say, because it still has slowed him down. But maybe the only player like that is Lionel Messi, based on today's performance. But Steve,
you got to slip that in again. Look at you.
I know. I am just a little hyped from earlier today. You might be able to tell. But Steven Dos Santos, to bring it back to the Tampa Bay Rowdies, he was also unfortunately facing a couple of injury problems this year. It was not, I don't think it was quite like 2021 where he was out for a couple months, straight at a time. But Steven Dos Santos's playing time also, when he was available, was not the same. And that just came down to, unfortunately, performance and the way that the Rowdies lined up. We did not do quite the same as we did last year in terms of having a hold-up man and 2 people on either side of him who would be applying pressure when the other team had the ball. That was a lot of what we did, and it wasn't quite the same this year, so his role unfortunately diminished. Now, with that being said, he still contributed important goals. He still contributed important points to the season. And, I think that I'm going backwards. I think that Steven Dos Santos, we should look at this point in December 2022, I think that we should look at his time with the Rowdies overall, because now he's leaving. And we should, be able to appreciate the heights that he helped us scale, and obviously wish him all the best in the future with everything that he does, whether that's continuing to play, whether that's moving into coaching, which maybe he will do in the future. Maybe he'll do something else like broadcasting or a business. I really haven't got a clue at this point. But Steven Dos Santos really helped this club out. Not like Sebastian Guenzatti, of course, but he did help us really achieve things that we had not prior to his being there. And I think that he set the tone in terms of, what types of players we are going to bring in to try and help us score goals. It's going to be serious players who have serious pedigree. That's actually, I think, one of the more important things is that if you want to come into this club, you either have to be somebody who's worth a damn in terms of what you've done in USL, or you have really impressed the coaching staff and they expect you to show what you're going to be able to do in USL.
It definitely raised the bar. I remember, going back 2 years ago, we were kind of the underdogs who, scrappily made, if that's a word, made our way kind of farther than we should have. And so it was building upon that success. And Steven Dos Santos was a player that was brought in and followed through. I think he more than met his expectations. He became a different dynamic that this team did not have. And so that was the expectation going into this season was, that he was going to be relied upon to kind of be the big bully in the box and offer that different dimension that even a Jake LaCava, wouldn't provide. So basically you're just making this multifaceted attack, but Dos Santos also was a guy who just, whether it's the physical nature of his play or the fact that other teams have to adapt to that reality, he just absorbed so much physical contact. He absorbed so many uncalled yellows
Mm-hmm.
so many times. Maybe this is a thing we haven't really talked about in our player reviews. There was this overarching thread about refereeing and the officiating of this season. So many times Neil Collins was more than ready to fire away at the poor officiating, and unfortunately, in my recollection, Steven Dos Santos is just a guy who just kept getting assaulted and beat up, and because he's a larger human being, maybe like he just didn't get the benefit of the
Well, I
call.
remember a
Um,
specific instance where the
oh
fact that he was a bigger player than the guy that he was up against
yeah,
went in the other guy's favor, even though they were obviously committing a foul.
yeah. It's so I have to temper it with that. Is that Dos Santos is a guy who injuries play a part in the story, um, and it's because of his skill set lent him to physical play, and he was unfortunately not a beneficiary of like equal play officiating and things like that. And so um, there's a little bit of what if and what we wish was going to happen with Dos Santos because of things out of his control. But unfortunately, just looking back at the numbers, it's yeah, our expectations were pretty lofty for Dos Santos, and he wasn't able to, whether through his fault of his own, live up to those, unfortunately. But on the whole, now that he unfortunately is moving on, I think that Dos Santos has been a more than positive impact for this team, a more than positive impact in terms of some of the younger players that he's been able to like the Jake LaCavas of the world that got to hang out with Dos Santos before they move on. And even up into the Guenzattis and Fernandezes, like without a Dos Santos, some of those opportunities wouldn't have been afforded to them because, again, I always say, you had to pick your poison. So what are you going to do? You're going to mark the target man and leave some other people open to be a little bit freer with their attack. So all in all, I will always remember Steven Dos Santos for the level that he raised the Rowdies to. He was part of the ascendance of this era, and unfortunately, he has to go. But I'll always be a fan of Steven Dos Santos. So
Yeah,
thank you for that, and I wish things would have went differently on your way out, man.
I I agree with that. The
Yeah,
last thing that I want to say with Steven Dos Santos is he probably has another season or two at least in the USL Championship level, if not more than that.
I hope so.
And you
I hope so.
mark my words, I think that he will come back to bite us at least once.
Ooh,
That's where I'm going to leave that
ooh,
one. Because I
yeah,
think that he still has at least, he has more in his tank, just like everyone else that we have talked about. And I think that he will I think that he will show us, a little bit. Not that he necessarily should have stayed or anything like that, but
sure.
anybody has a chip on their shoulder against a team that let them go, regardless of how old they are, what the circumstances were, anything like that. So
Yeah.
just keep it in mind. The last player on our list is number 77 on the roster, Lucky Mkusana. He is 35 years old, made 23 appearances, all but one of which were substitute appearances, with 4 goals and 2 Man of the Match awards from RBLR Sports. Right now, Eureka, his status is unknown. So, with that being said, we don't know where things are going to go with him. Let's just talk about the 2022 season. The way that I had actually written for these episodes to go, I had written all of these episodes, with the bullet points and the statistics and everything before
Yeah.
any of the roster news came out. So I didn't actually have anything to go off of when we were talking about, or when we were supposed to talk about these. Lo and behold, how it all turns out,
Yeah.
right? But Lucky Mkusana, I guess we can still do this as if it's lab settings and we're doing the experiment still. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
get through this here. Now, Lucky Mkusana had expectations, I would say, that did not include a ton of playing time, but
Yeah.
effectively included a ton of big goals. And in that sense, I will just throw this out there that I think that he lived up to exactly that.
Agreed. I think Lucky Kasana at this stage in his career You expect him to be a super sub to come in for about 10 to 20 minutes a game. Maybe occasionally you have to throw him out there in a rotation setting or a open cup or something like that where he plays a half or longer. But you're going to get more out of 19 minutes of Lucky Mkasana than you're going to get out of 45 minutes of somebody else. And yeah, look, even at his, I say advanced age, he's like, I'm the same age as Lucky Mkasana, right? But at his advanced age of playing, he just, I don't think he ever showed signs that he wasn't that player that we expected him to be. So I think he almost exceeded his expectations. I mean, he comes in the hero of 2022, right? The person who is just you can feel the electricity when you hear that 77 is coming on the pitch.
Yep.
Because you are about to see a full effort for whatever the amount of time is. He has one speed, and that speed is Formula One-esque, just overdrive, man. And obviously he's a legend at this club. Obviously he is a person that we all love on a personal level, but I think he more than exceeded his expectations in terms of, I mean, come on, 4 goals. We were talking about it. If you divide it out, it's like he added so much expected goal to the team. And you know, if you add up his minutes, maybe he played the length of 4.5 matches this year. But to have that much productivity in that short of a time span, I mean, there's not a lot of players that you expect to come in for 10 minutes and have a immediate changing, scoring impact, and he is one of them. And at this level, he is more than adequate at a talent level, and I hope that he comes back and plays another year. But to be honest with you, there's nothing more that Lucky could do to, like, he's already at the mountaintop, I think, in terms of legendary status. It's a different legendary status than the Guenzattis and the, Fernandezes I think we'll eventually have at this level with this team. But he has made his own mark and will forever be a legend in so many ways for the Tempe Rowdies. So I even just reading his name on the bullet points makes me smile. Like, I enjoy rooting for this player. He always, I think, gives me more than I bargained for with entertainment and competitive level. And I'm even losing the words to say about how awesome it was. I wish he could play 90 minutes because, like, I think that's the one thing we're robbed of, is that he can't give us more than that, or so. Yeah, I just wish I had more. What did a team of Lucky Mkasanas, please? I will take them.
I wouldn't mind that. Yeah, it should be noted in this 2022 season, he went on to make his 100th appearance for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, as well as a couple more.
Did he?
Yeah, I think that, when he is 35 years old and making when he's 35 years old and making his 100th appearance for a club, I think that kind of says all that needs to be said about what kind of player and what kind of person he is. Everybody knows that Lucky Mkasana is a good player. I think just as many people know that he's a good person. His charitable works are huge, and they are a very large aspect of not just the, his personality, but the fan community, in fact. And I love that because it's just kind of good to see, in the world that we live in, when everybody's upset about one thing or another. And Lucky Mkasana is here to, try and raise money for people, poor people in his home country of Zimbabwe. That's just incredible. I guess you might expect that from a Dartmouth graduate, but you wouldn't expect that he is, I don't know. You might also expect that a Dartmouth graduate might be, kind of, let's say, stuck up their own ass, and that is not Lucky. That is not Lucky Mkasana at all.
Absolutely not.
He is the exact opposite kind of person of that. So, if he can stick around, I don't think that anybody is going to be upset, whether that's Neil Collins or the literally smallest fan out there, the most child-sized fan. They are even the children will be out there cheering on Lucky, because I did hear quite a few children in the stands this past year. Just Lucky is an easy name for them to learn, right? They can yell, "Go Lucky!"
Dude, he's got it all. He's got the hair. He's got the cool number. He's got the cool name, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He and then you watch him play, and he's so entertaining. Like it checks all the boxes, and then you meet the guy, and you just go, "Geez, is it like it's everything is so great about this guy." So yeah, look, I'm glad that we got to talk about him last after after everything else. Because yeah, it's just like the smiley face emoji is like my whole feelings about Lucky M. Quesada.
Yep. Yeah, I hope that we can keep him around. So we will see how that goes.
Yeah.
Now, Eureka, we have finally come to the conclusion of our player grades for the 2022 season, and I think that we will go through our extra time segment here, and let's try to do that a little quickly before our fans who are listening in, because I'm sure that we have gone long yet again in this 4-part series that was supposed to be 2 or 3 to start with. So I want to go through the roster decisions real fast, just in case anybody missed them last year. Under contract for 2023 are Raiko Arozarena, Connor Antley, Aaron Guillen, Lewis Hilton, Nicky Law, Jake Araman, and Leo Fernandez. Jan Ekera's option was exercised on his contract, and that is pending league and federation approval. The contract extended players were Sebastian Dalgard and Dayon Harris. It should be noted that Phil Breno, CJ Cochran, Robert Castellanos, and Jake LaCava have all departed after their loans expired. Options were declined for the following players: Timmy Mel, Junior Etu, and Kyle Gregg, allowing them to leave. And the other players who were allowed to leave, whether by mutual consent or I suppose any other way, are Jordan Scarlett, Thomas Van Kaziel, Ian Antley, Lawrence Wyke, Matthew Serbel, Steven Dos Santos, and now Sebastian Guenzatti and Jordan Adebayo Smith. The status unknown players are Lucky M. Kosana, Santi Castaneda, and Tate Johnson. So obviously we will hope to hear soon for those couple of players. And let's go through the last bits of news with the Tampa Bay Rowdies here. Timmy Mel has moved on to Forward Madison in USL League One. That was after a very good season for Chattanooga Red Wolves in USL League One. Good luck to him. Obviously, we wish him all the best moving forward. Jordan Adebayo Smith is someone we haven't talked about a lot, but he was out on loan this past season to the New York Red Bulls 2. I believe he scored 5 goals overall. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Eureka, but
I'll trust you on that one.
Okay, so he has also moved on, and he will be signing with the New England Revolution 2 team, and that is in MLS Next Pro. So I think that there were a lot of people who had high hopes for Jordan Adebayo Smith. It's unfortunate that he didn't quite live up to them with the Rowdies specifically, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a good career ahead of him, and we do wish him all the best, not only with the Revs, but in every other team that he ends up playing for. Now, the last bit of news here that I want to go through, Eureka, we're going to do this a little bit more. We've obviously gone long, like I've said already in this long episode. So let's not do a ton of analysis tonight, but let's get back to this, whether that's you and me, Eureka, or when Carlos is able to return to the show. The Rowdies have made a new signing, and that is midfielder Zach Arivo from Birmingham Legion. He is a central midfielder who is kind of box to box in his playing style. He definitely likes to get up and down, obviously. And he will also be a standout player. Like physically, he has, longer hair. And I think that he sticks out in terms of what he does on the field, not just, literally the way that he looks, but also the fact that he is pretty damn good with the ball, and he eats up a lot of space with it too. You will see his locks flying down the field and carrying the ball at some point during the 2023 season, and I'm excited for that personally. But if you want to cover anything more on Zach Arivo before we close this out, then we'll do that now and make sure that everyone has a general idea for what we're getting before we go a little bit deeper into the player signings.
I can't wait for you and Carlos to talk about this. Unfortunately, this whole World Cup thing has kind of changed our trajectory, right? But once we get Carlos back, I would love to hear what you guys say. But from all accounts, again, defensive-minded player, but can create havoc, and it's exactly the kind of player that I think Neil Collins is just over the moon that he's able to bring in here.
Yeah.
A tenacious defender, a just high motor player, a person who not only like everyone's talking about his defense. Everyone's talking about his defense, and John Morrissey, a friend of the show, definitely was putting on to say, like, yes, he is this, but he also creates on the other. And so now
exactly
you're bringing a person like that in, whether it's to put side by side or in rotation with the already, like, this is already our forte in the midfield. Let's like it is a no man's land in the midfield of the Tampa Bay Rowdies right now in terms of, you know, the Hiltons and Antleys, and now we've got Erevo, and it's like, I think he up to this point looks like he will fit in immediately with the system that Neil Collins likes to operate. And you guys, I cannot wait to hear what your kind of more detailed analysis is, because from the beginning, I think this is definitely a good step forward in this new era. And kind of to go back, because I didn't get to say anything about Adebayo Smith, and it's just like, I think we all had high hopes for him, but it does kind of make sense. We put him on loan. We had him here 1 year. We put him on loan another year, and now who knows if he was going to have a spot going forward. And it was a transfer for an undisclosed. No one is saying how much money was exchanged, but which is different. Sebastian Guenzatti was allowed to leave as a free transfer and sign with a different team. This is a transfer, like he was sold to New England Revolution too. So we don't know how much, but that is how the transaction went for that. So
yes,
but other than that, that's all I got. A lot of news, and can't wait to hear, because a little teaser, right? Like, we have probably like half the team hasn't been announced yet, right? Like,
if not more than that at this point.
Yeah. So it's so fluid. I know this is the last thing I'll say, and then James, go ahead and take it home, man. But like, I know that it feels so up in the air with the Sebastian Guenzatti news, and we don't know how it's going to shake out. So let's appreciate what we had with El Capitan.
Exactly.
Let's smile, because they say smile because it happened. It is so heartbreaking. We're gonna talk about it more, unfortunately, but that's part of the grieving process, and we'll move forward. But know that this is just part of sweeping change that we should expect with next year's team. So hopefully that brings optimism. Erevo is one of these players that I think is a step in the right direction, and I'm glad that we were able to announce this so quickly, man. We didn't get these last year, so we'll see what the rest of December and January brings us, and then I want to revisit these feelings that we have right now about the uncertainty of our team. I want to revisit all of this when we're doing, our preseason predictions and expectations.
I like that idea. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will do it for us on this Tuesday night in December here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and please tune in next week, of course. You can follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports, and you can get at me on Twitter. I am at RBLR James K. I spent the day talking about Lionel Messi, but maybe you might have picked up on that from this episode. Eureka, where could they get at you?
I am at Eureka RBLR.
And if you would like to ask us any questions, you can also use the hashtag AskRBLR. Like and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. And for the final episode of our 2022 season review, I will say, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.